I'm Alma Katsu. This is my latest novel, The Deep. We're going to read something a little spooky for you tonight, just a few pages. The Deep is a reimagining of the sinking of the Titanic and its sister ship, the Britannic, and it has just a little horror twist to it, so keep that in mind. 18 September 1916. For the attention of the director, Morningate Asylum, Liverpool. Dear Sir, I write in the hope that you may be of assistance in a very sensitive matter. My dear daughter Annie disappeared unexpectedly from our home in the little village of Ballantoy 4 years ago. My wife and I have been searching for her ever since. We have made inquiries of hospitals and convalescent facilities, as our daughter was in a distraught state when we last saw her and suffering from injury, perhaps of a more grievous nature than we thought at the time. We began with facilities close to us, in Belfast and Lisburn and Bangor, but when we failed to locate her, we worked our way out, eventually crossing the Irish Sea to Liverpool. We wrote to 55 hospitals in all. Having met with no luck, it was suggested that we might expand our inquiries to facilities such as your own. Since childhood, our Annie has always been extraordinarily sensitive to the emotions possessed by all members of her sex. These emotions, however, can be both a blessing and a curse. A woman without these qualities would be a cold, heartless thing indeed, but to be possessed of too much love is no kindness. As her father, I at times cannot help but wish there had been a way to temper this quality in my dear Annie. And so I write to you, kind sir, to inquire as to whether there might be a woman in your establishment matching my Annie's description. She would be 22 years of age and stand 5 foot 6 inches tall. She is a shy, soft-spoken lass who can go a week without a word to anyone. I pray that you will be able to end our nightmare and return our Annie to us. Yes, in a word, she ran away from the home we provided for her, but we suspect that it is merely her own fear of censure that keeps her away. Please know, sir, that we are pursuing this matter outside the law in order to preserve Annie's privacy and dignity. I pray that we may count on your discretion. I imagine, in your position, you see a goodly number of women in situations like my Annie's. She is our only daughter, and despite her frailties, her weaknesses, despite anything she may have done, we love her dearly. Tell her that her brothers pray nightly for her return, and her room remains exactly as she left it, in the hope that we will take her again in her family's loving embrace. Yours respectfully, Jonathan Hebley, Ballantoy, Civil Parish, County Antrim, Northern Ireland. 25 September 1916. Morningate Asylum, Liverpool. Dear Mr. Hebley, I received your touching letter concerning your daughter Annie Friday last week. While I am not unsympathetic to your tragic situation, I regret to say that I am unable to cooperate. The Lunacy Act of 1890 has wrought many changes in the legal constraints governing institutions such as Morningate. The act has driven facilities to create hitherto unimagined internal policies designed, in my opinion, to protect the institution against spurious legal claims rather than for the benefit of its patients. At Morningate, these policies extend to safeguarding our patients' privacy. It is for this reason that I must respectfully decline to answer. It is a matter, you see, of protecting the privacy of the afflicted, who often suffer greatly due to the general public's prejudices against those with disorders of the nerves and mind. Please do not construe this reply as either affirmation or denial of knowledge of your daughter's presence at Morningate. As administrator of this institution, I am bound by law. Your servant, Nigel Davenport, Physician and Director, Morningate Asylum, Byshore Mews, Liverpool, England. Chapter 1. October 1916. Morningate Asylum, Liverpool. She is not mad. Annie Hebley pokes her needle into the coarse gray linen, a soft color like the feathers of the doves that entrap themselves in the chimneys here, fluttering and crying out, sometimes battering themselves to death in a vain effort to escape. She is not mad. Annie's eyes follow the needle as it runs the length of the hem, weaving in and out of fabric, in and out, in and out, sharp and shining and so precise. But there is something in her that is hospitable to madness. Annie has come to understand the erratic ways of the insane, the crying fits, incoherent babblings, violent flinging of hands and feet. There is, after days and weeks and years, a kind of comforting rhythm to them. But no, she is not one of them. Of that she is certain. As certain as the Lord and the Blessed Virgin, her da might have said. There are a dozen female patients hunched over their sewing, making the room warm and stuffy despite the meagerness of the fire. Work is thought to be palliative to nervous disorders, so many of the inmates are given jobs, particularly those who are here due more to their own poverty than any ailment of mind or body. While most of the indigent are kept in workhouses, Annie has learned, quite a few make their way to the asylums instead, if there are empty beds to keep them, not to mention the women of sin. Whatever their reasons for turning up at Morningate, most of the women here are meek enough and bend themselves to the nurse's direction. But there are few of whom Annie is truly afraid. She pulls in tight to herself as she works, not wanting to brush up against them, unable to shake the suspicion that madness might pass from person to person like a disease, that it festers the way a fine mold grows inside a milk bottle left too long in the sun, undetectable at first, but soon souring and corrupting until all the milk is spoiled. Annie sits on a hard little stool in the needle room with her morning's labor puddled in her lap. But it is the letter tucked inside her pocket that brushes up against her thoughts unwillingly, a glowing ember burning through the linen of her dress. Annie recognized the handwriting before she even saw the name on the envelope. She has reread it now at least a dozen times. In the dark cover of night, when no one is looking, she kisses it like a crucifix. As if drawn to the sin of Annie's thoughts, a nurse materializes at her shoulder. Annie wonders how long she has been standing there, studying her. This one is new. She doesn't know Annie yet, not well anyway. They leave Annie to the late arrivals on staff, who haven't yet learned to be frightened of her. Annie, dear, Dr. Davenport would like to see you. I'm to escort you to his office. Annie rises from her stool. None of the other women glance up from their sewing. The nurses never turn their backs to the patients of Morningate, so Annie shuffles down the corridor, the nurse's presence like a hot poker at her back. If Annie could get a moment alone, she might get rid of the letter. Stash it behind the drapes, tuck it under the carpet runner. She mustn't let the doctor find it. Just thinking of it again sends a tingle of shame through her body. But she is never alone at Morningate.